Welcome to Year 7 History. My name is Gabrielle, and this is our new unit on the Black Death. This is Lesson 1. Let's start with a starter activity. Learn the spellings and definitions of these key words, ready for a class test in Lesson 2. 1. Epidemic. A widespread occurrence of an infectious disease in a community at a particular time. 2. Miasma, a bad smell, believed to cause disease. 3. Pestilence, a fatal epidemic disease. 4. Buboes, swellings that were a symptom of bubonic plague. 5. Mortality, the number of deaths recorded in a specific period. So let's get on to our lesson for today. What was the Black Death? Arrival in 1348. In May 1348, a ship from Calais, France, arrived in the port of Weymouth, Dorset, in England. The crew were unaware that along with their goods, the ship was carrying a deadly cargo, the Black Death. Within a few days, hundreds of men, women, and children would be infected. Within a few months, around one-third of the population of England would be dead. What was it? Most historians now think the Black Death was a highly infectious disease known as bubonic plague, caused by bacteria and carried by rats. So here's an activity that you might like to try in your history notebook. Describe how people get the plague using the pictures and the arrows below. So don't worry too much at this stage if you don't want to complete this activity, because this is going to be explained in further detail as we go through this unit. So where did the Black Death come from? The first recorded outbreak of the Black Death was in Central Asia in 1338 to 1339. And Central Asia you can see there on the map. That's the region we know of today as Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, all the stans really, between China and the Middle East. From there, the disease seems to have travelled along a trade route known as the Silk Road, reaching Kaffa, which is a town in the Crimea in the Black Sea, in 1343. So it took about 4 or 5 years to reach Europe as we know it today. The disease then seems to have spread by ship into Central Europe, arriving in Italy around 1347, before spreading overland into France and Germany, and then by ship to England. So there's a map on our screen there that we can see showing the spread of the Black Plague through the Mediterranean and Europe in the mid-1300s AD. The panic spreads. England was in a state of panic. The knowledge and wisdom of medieval doctors and the church seemed to have no effect on the disease. Many people must have felt that the end of the world had come. Let's do a source analysis. I'm going to read the source in a moment, and as I read the source, see if you can find two things that you learn from this source about the impact of the Black Death. And after I've read the source, I'll give you time to pause the video and answer these questions in your notebook. Source A, written by Geoffrey the Baker, an English chronicler in around 1350. So a chronicler is someone who writes about the history of a place. It came to England and first began in the towns and ports joining on the sea coasts in Dorsetshire, where, as in other counties, it made the country quite void of inhabitants, so that there was almost none left alive. From there it passed into Devonshire and Somersetshire, even unto Bristol, and was so terrible The people of Gloucestershire avoided those from Bristol at all costs. But at length it came to Gloucester, yea, even to Oxford and to London, and finally it spread over all England, and so wasted the people that scarce the 10th person of any sort was left alive. So here are the answers to our source analysis. Write 2 things that you learn from this source about the impact of the Black Death. Well, it first began in cities on the coast. That's something that we read in the source. Secondly, it made the country quite void of inhabitants. And thirdly, scarcely 1 out of 10 people were left alive. Let's take a look at another source analysis. This one is source B, written by Brother John Klyn of Kilkenny in around 1349. He seems to have been trying to record what was happening for future generations. So that the writing does not perish with the writer, I leave parchment for continuing the work, in case anyone should still be alive in the future, and any son of Adam can escape this pestilence and continue the work thus begun. This is the last sentence written by Brother Klyn. After is written, here it seems the author died. So sources A and B are both written by monks. Give one reason why monks are a useful source of information from this time period. So take a moment to pause this video now and answer this question in your notebook. When you're ready to check the answer, restart the video. Welcome back. So here is the answer for this question. Why were monks a useful source of information from this time period? Well, the main reason is because they were the only ones in medieval society who could read and write, and so they spent their time chronicling historical events. So they were a very important source of information for that reason. So what do people believe was the cause of the Black Death? Influence of religion. As we learned earlier, religion was very important in medieval times. Medieval people turned to religion in all aspects of life, for example, medicine, education, and law. Therefore, it's no surprise that most explanations for the Black Death were religious ones. Why? Let's explore these beliefs in more detail. Medical and scientific knowledge. This was very limited. It would be hundreds of years before science understood that bacteria and viruses were the cause of disease. Medieval doctors did not have the tools or knowledge to make the connection between the bacteria that lived in rats and how the plague was then transmitted to humans. Instead, medical students were taught that the 4 humours explained illness in the body. So what are the 4 humours? The humours were the fluids of the body produced in the different organs: blood in the heart, yellow bile, liver, black bile, spleen, and phlegm in the brain. Any dysfunction or problem in the appearance of the fluids helped to pinpoint a treatment. For example, in the box there, to treat a blood disorder, patients were bled, blood was drained from them, or they had leeches attached to their body. Astronomy theory. Some scientists and scholars claim the Black Death was caused by a misalignment of the planets. The planets weren't where they were supposed to be, so it caused bad things to happen. The plague was just an example of a bad thing that happened due to this misalignment. Punishment from God. The most widespread explanation, however, was that the plague was a punishment from God. Let's do another source analysis now. Source C. This was written by another English monk at the time of the Black Death. The monk writes, "If I am asked what is the cause of the disease, what is its physical cause, and by what means can someone save himself from it, I answer to the first question that sin is the cause. To the second question I say that it arises from the sea. For the devil, by the power committed to him when the seas rise up high, is sending his poison, sending it forth to be added to the poison in the air, and that air spreads gradually from place to place and enters man through the ears, eyes, nose, mouth, pores, and other entrances. Right, let's consider the question. What does this source suggest about what people thought was causing the Black Death? Give 2 explanations from the source. So take a moment to pause the video now, answer those questions in your notebook. When you're ready to check your answer, restart the video. Welcome back. Here is the answer to our source analysis. What does this source suggest about what people thought was causing the Black Death? Give 2 explanations from the source. Well, I found 3 from the text. Firstly, sin is the cause. Secondly, it arises from the sea. And C, the devil is sending his poison. Take a look at this figure. A monk and a scientist arguing the causes of the Black Death. God is displeased with us, says the monk. He is punishing us for our sins. The Bible contains many examples of plagues caused by God. The Bible is true, so it must be God causing this plague. The Bible says that there will be a day of judgment in which the world will end and everyone will be judged. Perhaps that is what is happening. People are acting in sinful ways. People even held a village fair in the local churchyard. The scientist, however, says the disease is caused by foul air. Many people are dying in the cities because the streets smell so bad. There have been earthquakes in Europe. These must have released foul air from the ground, which has now spread to England. And the latest science says that astrology is the cause. The planets have been in unusual positions recently. Here's a mind map activity that you might like to complete in your books. Create a mind map in your books to show what people believe caused the Black Death. Use symbols to show the cause. For example, a cross to show religion. So if you're not sure about what the causes of the Black Death were, or you may need to revise some of those, go back to the beginning of this video to revise them before you attempt this activity. Right, let's take a look at a video now about the Black Death. There are some questions that follow, so let's have a look at the questions first, and then you can have a look at the video to answer the questions. So the questions are, 1. Plague is caused by a bacterium called Yersinia pestis. In what year was the plague of Justinian? 3. Why was it named the plague of Justinian? 4. What are the 3 causes of the plague pandemic? And 5. When did scientists discover the bacteria that cause plague? Right, let's take a look at the video now.
Plague is notorious for causing mass sickness and devastation. But as much tragedy as the disease has caused, it also helped drive crucial scientific and social progress. Plague is an infectious disease caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis. It mainly affects rodents and spreads by way of insects. Because of these insect carriers, plague has been passed on to humans with devastating consequences. 3 major plague pandemics have occurred in human history. And while they occurred centuries apart, they shared similar traits that paved the way for the spread of disease. One cause of plague pandemics was the rise of international trade. Trade routes connected once isolated communities and created large economic networks. But by facilitating the movement of goods between communities, trade routes also facilitated the movement of germs. International trade was an impetus for the first plague pandemic on record, the Plague of Justinian. In the 6th century, outbreaks began in Egypt, and thanks to land and sea trade routes, they spread throughout the Byzantine Empire. Named after the emperor at the time, the Plague of Justinian is estimated to have wiped out about half of Europe's population. Growing economies also made way for urbanization and a rising urban population. This resulted in crowded neighborhoods and the accumulation of waste, which created unsanitary living conditions. Cities and their residents essentially became incubators for germs and diseases. This was particularly evident in the second and most infamous plague pandemic. In the 14th century, Europe was experiencing an economic and population boom, especially in cities. Proper waste management did not exist at the time, making cities vulnerable to disease. After trade routes brought plague from Asia, where it killed millions in China and the Middle East, the disease wiped out about a third of Europe's population, earning itself the moniker, the Black Death. What also aided in the transmission of the disease was the lack of medical knowledge. For most of human history, the cause of illnesses, germs, was unknown, making sicknesses like the plague a mystery. This lack of knowledge drove the spread of disease as recently as the 19th century. Outbreaks in northwest India eventually reached major port cities in China. In just over a century, plague was exported throughout the globe and caused outbreaks in every continent except Antarctica, making it the most widespread pandemic in history. This plague pandemic, however, was the last. In 1894, scientists discovered the bacteria behind the plague outbreaks. Their discovery helped further developments in microbiology, medicine, urban planning, and sanitation methods, which led to the treatment and prevention of the disease. Economic expansion, urbanization, and a lack of medical knowledge contributed to the disastrous spread of plague. In turn, however, the disease helped catapult crucial advancements in science and public health, very well making plague pandemics a thing of the past.
Okay, so let's return to our questions now. 1. Plague is caused by a bacterium called Yersinia what? 2. In what year was the plague of Justinian? 3. Why was it named the plague of Justinian? 4. What are the 3 causes of the plague pandemic? And 5. When did scientists discover the bacteria that cause plague? So take a moment to pause the video now and answer these questions in your notebook. When you're ready to check your answers, restart the video. Welcome back. Here are the answers to our video questions. 1. Plague is caused by a bacterium called Yersinia pestis. 2. In what year was the plague of Justinian? The answer is AD 541. Why was it named the plague of Justinian? It was named after the Byzantine emperor of the time, Emperor Justinian. 4. What are the 3 causes of the plague pandemic? Increased international trade, rising urban populations, and lack of medical knowledge. And 5. When did scientists discover the bacteria that cause plague? This was in 1894. Well, that brings us to the end of our first lesson on our unit on the Black Death. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to visit our website, www.voyagerschool.com.au, for more valuable courses in more subjects for high school students. See you next time.